Phil Perry covers the Patriots for NBC Sports
I learn
Boston.
something every time I'm in here with you guys.
Yeah, he
Appreciate
joins
that.
us on the Toucher and Hardy Show, brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more with FanDuel, and you can see Esoteric and Phil Perry if you watch us on YouTube, which is available all the time and live if you search the show or the station on YouTube. Phil Perry, enough shenanigans because there is a lot of stuff to talk about, which is great news in a way. But I'll ask you the obvious question. Drake Maye was announced as the starting quarterback, or it leaked that he was the starting quarterback. I believe that happened. Did that happen Tuesday?
Came out Tuesday. Quarterbacks found out Monday.
Okay. Why now?
So the why now for this specific game, I believe, has to do with the performance of the offense over the course of the first 5 weeks of the season. And you could say that's a bad reason, and you'd have an argument, especially going against this team that they're about to face, which is one of the best in the NFL by many different metrics, especially when it comes to their pass rush.
Blitz rate, too.
Blitz rate, pressure rate, all of those things where
Even
the Patriots
sacks.
Patriots are deficient.
Yeah.
This is where the Texans excel. And so I understand people who say this makes no sense. What I would say is, and I believe we talked about this last time I was on the show here, but conversations that I had last week going into the Dolphins game indicated that this was coming imminently. Obviously, it wasn't going to be for the Dolphins. My guess at the time was, because I wasn't told exactly, but my guess at the time was it would be London, or maybe the week after. They wanted to see the Jets again, second time around. Maybe it makes the game planning a little bit easier. And I also believed, I know this for a fact, they wanted the offensive line to settle down a little bit. Ideally, they wanted the line to settle down a little bit before they put Drake Maye in. And they knew they were without David Andrews, and they knew there had been shuffling in and out of the lineup all season long. They just finished with their fifth starting offensive line combination in 5 games. It might be a sixth, by the way. We could talk about that later if you want.
Has the offensive line settled in?
I
don't
would say,
think so.
No, it hasn't settled in, but I would say if you watch that game, didn't you think they performed a little bit better than they had last week relative to previous weeks?
It's like 1 on a scale of 10 as opposed to 0.
And
I felt like there were some decent pockets there for Jacoby Brissett in ways that there really had not been in some other games.
Plays, but overall still bad.
And again, I would leave it to you to dissect whether or not it's because they were being more effective, or the pass rush wasn't as effective, or they were saying, you know what, let's not kill ourselves. Let's not get after him too much, because him throwing the ball isn't the worst thing in the world.
That could be it too. And you're right. I mean, they're going to be bad all year.
Yeah.
Right? It's never going to be good. And that's why I said, hey, maybe another week, maybe go 2 weeks without David Andrews as your starter, right? The most important player on your offensive line. Maybe give it 2 games before you get Drake Maye in there. That's why I guessed, and again, on the pregame show with Murray and Gasper, I said my guess would be London. So this feels a little early to me, but really only a little. So that's why I hesitate when people call it a panic move, or they had no plan and they're just rushing him out there. That to me really isn't the case. They were planning on playing him and playing him very soon. Is it 7 days early? Is it 14 days early?
Yeah.
It might be. But in the grand scheme of things, are you willing to do that in order to keep people in the organization motivated, invested, inspired? That's the thing that makes this decision hard for Mayo. Is it is a human locker room. It's a human environment. There are people everywhere, here included, media people here included, that say this is a horrible thing to do. You can't do it. It's really easy to say from afar. When you're in it and you're losing and it's awful, you're looking to make whatever changes you can to improve it.
Let me ask you this. Was there is this sticky? You brought it up, but it sounds like they didn't have a plan, like a definitive plan of when they wanted to put him in. You know what I'm saying? Where he would be in his development, everything. It just seems they knew that he wasn't ready when they drafted him, and then you would think that they would have. Here's what I would think that what Belichick or someone would have done. They're going like, here's the plan, and I don't care what anyone says or this is the plan, and we're sticking to it, and this is what's going to happen because this is what we believe is best.
So I think they actually did get close to executing it the way they wanted to. Like I said, so before the Dolphins game, what I was told was this is happening, and it's happening relatively soon.
And that was the plan before the season, or where he was in his development. It had more to do with where Maye was than where the team was.
Yes. So that to me, I think mattered more. I don't think they anticipated being this bad offensively, quite frankly. Right. So my understanding of the plan was they had a window of time. They had a stretch of multiple games where they had targeted for Drake Maye to make his first start. And I think we were getting close to that. If we're not in it already. Again, I don't know for sure what exactly the weeks are. But I knew they wanted him to play, and I knew they wanted him to play a significant amount this year because they want to know it's critical for them. They can't get through this year without knowing what they have in Drake Maye before going into year 2. So I think it's a little bit. I think the plan was. I asked Drake Maye yesterday, was the plan expedited? And his first answer to the question, I don't know if you guys heard the press conference. His first answer to the question was, "Well, I think it's no secret. Everybody knows our offense isn't performing the way we would want it to do." To be performing. And that to me is the honest answer.
But because I heard Felger say this the other day, I think it's an excellent point. Why can't you go into next year without having Drake Maye play this year? You're going to draft another quarterback? You're going to move on from him? You're not going to do anything differently next year if he's progressing in camp and he looks better in practice. If he literally didn't take a meaningful snap all year long, it's not going to change your plan of quarterback next year.
I think you just lose time, though. You lose time, and it is. People look at the rookie contracts and say you got 4 or 5 years. The reality with these quarterbacks, if they're good, you got to extend them after 3.
Yeah. That's fine, and that's fine.
So now you're down to 2.
Okay, but that's different from knowing what we have.
Well, you won't know exactly what any of these young quarterbacks are until year 3 or 4 anyway, right?
Yeah, but
so
you don't need.
You have an idea. You have a better idea of what you need to build around him. You have a better idea of how he's impacting other players on the team. A better idea of who he connects with, who he doesn't. If there are other guys, for instance, that you're trying to extend or not. I think it's important for me personally. I think it actually could be interesting if he's pretty good by the end of the year. If you're able to entice anybody to come play here, which you haven't been able to do for the last 2 years.
That's a different argument. That one I would be more in line with.
Well, that way you have an idea of what he is, and the rest of the league does too. And there is some value in that, I would argue.
Unless he stinks.
The other thing is it's just really hard. Again, I come back to this human element of it. If you're in Hardy, you've been in that building before. You know how it can feel when things are going bad. It's really easy for, again, I've seen Dan Orlovsky, I've seen Mina Kimes, I've seen other national analysts, and these are really smart people. They're great at what they do. It's very easy from afar to say, oh, this is the worst thing they could ever do. The situation's horrible, which we all would acknowledge. I'm not saying it's a good situation to put him in. It's a bad offensive line. It's a bad group of receivers. You're not even really sure what you have at play caller. Those are really kind of the 3 pillars that you're looking for if you're trying to raise and develop a young quarterback, right? We don't know what they have in any of those areas, and yet I still think this is the right thing to do because they've tried every other lever and button to make things a little bit better over the course of the first 5 weeks. We've seen different receivers in the starting lineup, out of the starting lineup. Tyquan Thornton's on the back of a milk carton now. He was starting at the start of the year. They've used all sorts of different offensive line combinations. The one lever they have left to pull is the number 3 overall pick who's just sitting there completely healthy, practicing well, looking good. Everybody knows he's a pretty good player in terms of what he's been able to show them to this point. We'll see what it looks like in the regular season, but they know he's got potential. They know he's the number 3 overall pick, and he's just sitting there. You have to try to do something to improve the situation when it's been as bad as it's been there.
Yeah, the Texans, when they played Caleb Williams, rookie quarterback, they blitzed him 43% of the time, and they sacked him 7 times.
But that is a good point.
I think he was under pressure on almost 50% of his snaps. I think it was 48% of his snaps. Caleb Williams was under pressure that game.
So, yeah, because they played man and just blitzed him. They just blitzed him. This is all stuff that other people have told me. I didn't watch the film. Go ahead.
So what ruined Mac Jones, which just happened here? Offensive coordinator, under pressure constantly, turned him from a very good rookie quarterback into a dumpster fire in year 2 and 3. There is certainly a danger that could happen with this kid. I understand you vet him before you draft him. You wonder if he's mentally capable, et cetera, et cetera. Mac Jones looked good his rookie year. You give him a bad offensive coordinator. You give him bad skill players around him, and he went south.
There's no doubt there's risk to this. I would never argue that. Major risk. Serious risk. The other option, based on what you're describing, is you just don't play him until you feel the situation's better, which isn't until at least next year, maybe the year after that. So to me, that's not an option. You do have to play him eventually. And maybe you feel this way now. I don't know how you felt during the draft, and it's fine if you've changed your opinion on it based on what we've seen. But now are you arguing maybe they shouldn't have taken him at all?
No.
No.
I wanted them. Speaking of myself, I wanted them to take the quarterback.
Here's the deal. I'll tell you my opinion to address all the issues you just said. If I was a Patriots fan, I'd be concerned that he's playing too early. What do you mean? Is that the knock on him was bad footwork. We just talked to David Richard. The knock on him, bad footwork. He had a bad offensive coordinator, bad offenses last year at North Carolina. My concern would be now he has a bad whatever offensive coordinator remains to be seen. Guys not familiar with calling plays. A bad offensive line. They don't have any weapons. He's not going to have any time, and people aren't going to get open quickly. That he's going to fall back into those bad habits. So everything that you progressed with since you've drafted him and taught him goes out the window, because when you're getting chased, and Caleb Williams was hit in that game 12 times. He was knocked to the ground between sacks and quarterback hits. And you're just in there, and that means how often was he pressured? When you're running for your life, that seems to me when exactly you'd fall into old habits. And if that was the knock on him, I think that the later in the season you play him, and the more you ingrain the good habits, and the less he's under cannon fire, that the less he is to fall back into those habits. That would be my concern.
Those are all legitimate concerns. I think you're trying to find the happy medium between the things you're talking about while also getting him enough experience so that he can work his way through whatever early lumps he takes as a first-time starter, get through those, get out the other side, and then maybe by the time you get into December and January, then you actually see him play well. I think that's the hope. You have to give him enough time to sort of work his way through some things. But I also think it just comes back to you are operating a team. While his development is the single most important thing that happens within this team and this organization for the next several years, you do owe it to the rest of the franchise. I would say I would start with the players specifically in that locker room, but also there's an entire ecosystem of people that are depending on how this thing goes. And if you're not doing everything you can to improve it, that to me is in some respects a dereliction of duty. This is the last thing you have to do to try to improve the situation, in my opinion. You could look at other things and say you could completely overhaul the offense. You could get more
It's too late
modern.
to do that now.
We've talked, more motion at the snap. All this sort of you could try to tweak things here and there, but this is the obvious quote unquote answer that you have left to at least try to see if it'll help things out.
It does speak just very briefly to what you said a few minutes ago, though, Phil. For all the people on the outside saying this is the worst thing you can do. You're not in the building. You don't understand what things are like in here right now. And the mood around here and the mood within the locker room and the offices is, oh no, it's time.
Which is why it's so much easier if you have a good quarterback already on the roster.
Yes,
like the Packers, like the Chiefs,
or
right?
a
Like all of those
backup
situations.
quarterback, or someone if you needed to make a change at quarterback that you could go to, except for May. Like that's the thing, and that's what I've never understood. You said Tyquan Thornton. Take Tyquan Thornton off the roster. He played one snap.
How many wide receivers
Carry
are
four
on this
quarterbacks.
roster? You can afford to
All right,
lose one.
We do have to break, but let's break and come back with more Phil Perry.
Stay tuned for more.
If you like that clip, and how could you not? Check out more videos from Toucher and Hardy here. Point slightly up and to the left. For more Patriots analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. Point slightly down and to the left. And for the latest from the Sports Hub, download at 985thesportshub.com.